I have been doing drag for now since 2015, 16, so 6 or 7 years now. I don't know the math. I'm pretty. I'm not smart. So I went to Boston Conservatory for musical theater, and I started doing drag with, if you know who Violencia was there, she had a show, and she let me do a couple nights before I really started. I started drag in college because there was a drag show every year that gave to the Trevor Project that I was always a part of, but it was just like once a year. And one year I even directed it, so that was really cool. And then I moved to New York City and really started doing drag. It's like, you know, the capitalist, draggiest place that there is, really, because there's so much business for drag. So it's very dog-eat-dog. It's very like who you know, what you've won, what you're wearing, that type of stuff. And there's definitely like a sect of drag that is really just beautiful art out there, and so many amazing, talented performers out in New York City or in Brooklyn. So that was the best part. So I think, you know, that's kind of the biggest difference is like out here, now that we have a little more control over the kind of shows that we're doing, and people trust us a lot more to do what we do best versus like, I don't have to cater really to anyone out here as much. Like out there, there's a business, there's a set game plan. This is how you do drag. This is how you get to the top, and that's how you do it. What's cool about Salem is it is a big tourist city. So it's similar to New York City in the way that you're constantly getting people from all over the world in one place. It's definitely a lot more Caucasian than New York City. But I think that I basically just wanted to apply like the lack of drag here. In New York City, you can find drag at like 4 different bars on the same night, on a Tuesday, on a Thursday, on a, you know, it doesn't have to be at 10 p.m. on a Friday night. That's the only time that you'll see a drag show. Yeah, I just kind of saw the gap where queer people could really thrive in Salem, and kind of, I guess, took advantage of that gap and made sure that we were filling that space up.
I would say starting to produce my own shows has been a really big milestone for me, because I spent a lot of time like helping people produce other shows or just being a part of other shows and thinking like that's too much for me to take on. And I threw my first Drag King show maybe 2 years ago now. That seems crazy to me. And the fact that I can like keep producing shows and getting people to come to shows and like do that, and like putting on even more shows now, like I'm glad that I'm snowballing that responsibility for myself. Now this new project that I'm doing, it's the Drag King and Thing Fling. And that I just took to Instagram and put on my story like, hey, have you either never performed or never performed in Salem / with me? Hit me up. It's really cool to have this like big new network, because most of the people who applied, I didn't know. So that was really cool for me to be like, this went far quickly, because I'm not a very social person, so it's hard for me to meet new people sometimes. So it was nice to kind of like shout into the void and have the void shout back. Like, we have such a tight-knit community here, and like we love all the people that we work with together, like the hometown queeros, but like I don't want anyone to think that they have to be our friend, or that they have to suck up to us, or that they have to compete. Like, if you have drag, want to perform, here's a stage. Like, I don't think people should have to like earn their way in. Like, if you're ready, if you have something prepared, I want to see it. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do drag. Like, I've spent my share of money on things, but a lot of the stuff I get comes from like thrift stores. Like, I don't really set out with anything specific in mind. I just kind of go and get inspired by what I find, or by like what's on clearance. Like this shirt, it's an expensive shirt. I got it on clearance. And would I have bought it otherwise? I don't know. But like, I see a lot of people who spend a lot of money, and like there's lots of beautiful designer things, and if you're gonna wear it a million times and love it, great. But like, I grew up poor, I continue to be a poor adult, like I can feed myself and clothe myself and all that, but like, I don't know, sometimes it's scary to see the amount of people who pour so much money and get such little return. So I try to put together something that I feel good about without having to like break the bank as well. That's a big part of my inspiration for being a little unkempt, where I'm like, well, I can't afford to have million-dollar suits on for every show, because you've seen me. I roll around on the floor, I'm ripping my clothes off. Like, I have to make my peace with possibly ruining everything I own every time I perform. And just practice. Practice makes perfect. Diamond sent me a picture of me in drag 2 years ago, and I look so bad. I look so bad, and I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I practiced though, and like now it's better. So start by start, practice, do it, just go do drag.
I kind of, when coming up with names too, like for drag, I tried to come up with different names. In high school is when I got the name Miss Michael. I used to do like the morning news one day in high school, and someone just said, like, started calling me Miss Michael, and like the whole drama club did too, so that I used to put my name on the morning news as Miss Michael, and so that's kind of where the birth of that came from. But I tried to do the whole street name, and first pet name, Shania Hathaway, was going to be my drag name at one point, but I feel like having my name, Michael, be a part of it, it really is just... it's not so much a persona, it is just kind of a part of me and expressing a part of me that maybe I don't always get to show all the time. When I was in the drama club, I did do, I was like in the dancing ensemble, but I kind of like taught myself how to dance, honestly. Well, I will say, and if they do see this, I have to say, I have my cousins, Brittany and Taylor. They taught me when I was really young. They would put on Gasolina, Daddy Yankee, and they would teach my sister and I choreography to it, and we would make full like dance routines. And that actually kind of started my love for dancing. Just at like Thanksgivings or something, we'd be doing choreography in the living room or something, and then just throughout the years, I just kept, like, I would just be in my basement, like, playing music and watching, like, dance videos and trying to teach myself how to dance. So I'd love to continue taking, like, I'd love to take some dance classes and really expand on that. But yeah, I kind of just taught myself.
I am a theater kid through and through. I did theater in middle school, I did theater in high school, and my drama teacher was very openly gay when we were in high school, and truly let us on stage live our life, like get every feeling that we wanted to out. So a lot of me, you know, acting and emoting comes from like his teachings, and I owe a lot of like my acting skills to my high school theater teacher, who, you know, paved my way in acting and theater. Oftentimes we found ourselves watching John Waters and Divine films in class, and a lot of those like memories of watching those like that on like the side of our high school auditorium wall like shaped me into, you know, being who I am. Divine is one of the oldest drag queens. If you don't know who Divine is, like, I seriously recommend going and checking out something like Pink Flamingos, which is one of like John Waters' best pieces of work. Very underground, spooky, filthy, kind of like all the aspects of drag that I love. Horror and filth are kind of what I built my drag on. And obviously drag is literally anything you want it to be, which is why I'm sitting here as a fashion clown. But there's something that I love about like the underground, like filth and like horror aspect of like art and drag and getting like, you know, covered in fake blood and just being weird and bizarre and like spooky. Yeah, John Waters and Divine are a huge inspiration. So I love the big. I love taking up as much space as possible. So when I'm in drag, I want to wear like the tallest platform shoes, the biggest hip pads, and the tallest hair, so that you can just like see me.
A lot of our shows that we did for a while before we kind of returned to Salem were actually in Peabody. They're at the Black Box. We used to do bingos there. So that was one, it was every couple months we would do a show there. And I always loved it. Like, doing the Black Box shows were great. And it was exciting to be able to do a show in Peabody, like just right down the street. That was something I never thought I'd be doing. So that was definitely exciting. So yeah, before we really got into Salem, it was Peabody that we were performing mainly in.
To be able to do a bingo show again in Peabody is really, special, because we haven't done it since like 2018. I think they had like a change of people who were running the shows and events at the Black Box. But it's so amazing to get to perform in my hometown at literally the main library in downtown Peabody. It is so iconic. When Diamond started doing it, I was like, I have to get into the Peabody Library like somehow. So I reached out to them and they were like, absolutely. And I was like, let's do it. We had a full house for my bingo, and it was a graveyard smash, to say the least. It was so much fun. They said that it was like one of the best events they've had in a really long time, and we're gonna do one again soon, so it was great. But I love reading, you know what I mean?
Diamond started doing the Diamonds Dine-In. We did a show there, and it was the first time that I had worked with Diamond, and I think we just really clicked. It was a lot of fun. I remember it being like a 98-degree day and we performed outside. So I was like a mess, but it was so much fun, and it was exciting and a little scary too, like being in front of such a big crowd. But yeah, we formed a good relationship with them and did a couple more shows, and then that's when I met like Buster Pants and Dick Kane and Pee-wee and so many great performers, and it just kind of happened so naturally.
So right now I'm in the Boston Drag Gauntlet, cycle 8, so there's already been 7 cycles, so it's like a really well-established competition in Boston, and there are 6 competitions, 6 challenges within the competition. They're bi-weekly at Jock's Cabaret every other Wednesday. But yeah, it's like a RuPaul's Drag Race style live competition. There's 10 of us competing for a like gauntlet, which is like a rhinestoned encrusted like glove, which is really cool. And like a cash prize and the title. So I'm really proud of myself. I've already won 2 out of the 3 challenges. And we have 3 left. The next one's this Wednesday. So I'm really excited for it. So the second challenge was a family makeover challenge, and I was like, who else do I have to make over but Miz Diamond Wigfall? And that was like an amazing experience because she never really has had her makeup done by anyone else. So I did her whole makeup, we got dressed together, we choreographed like a 3-minute performance, and we won that night. And I am so beyond proud of that performance. That was like definitely one of my like proudest drag moments. You obviously want to be the best out of the 10 people on that stage, so there's been a lot more thought and like deep dives into each challenge, like how I specifically want to represent myself in Boston, being such like a huge like community of LGBT and drag and yeah, I just want to strive to be my best, because when I perform with the Hometown Queeros, like, and we have like big gay night out, it's more of like a showcase of our talents, and I can like truly have like so much fun because it just kind of feels like we're all there for the same reason, which I guess we are for the competition too, but there's stakes to that, so there's different levels to it, and I'm not usually one to compete, but I've been competing and I love it.
It's been nice to have just like a long-lasting friendship like that, and the fact that we perform together is just, it's so much fun. I love seeing how much they grow, and how much we both have grown over the years, and with our performing, our makeup, and now Maxine's in the gauntlet, like performing and competing and doing so well. So it's so nice to see like where this journey has taken us.
There are very few places in Salem I don't like going, I feel welcomed everywhere when we do shows in newer places, or if we do a show at a place that we've done it for the 1000th time. Like, it never gets old performing at Bit Bar. And like, they treat us really well, and like the people who come out to the show treat us really well. And the only time we have interactions with people that are negative, it's usually people who are not from around here. It's someone who's passing through who doesn't understand the culture. I love it. I love being a part of the scene around here and like watching it grow over the years and like realizing like, oh, I kind of have a hand in that. Big responsibility, but I'm trying. I was not born and raised here, but I just celebrated my 12th year of living here in Salem, Massachusetts. And the first year I moved here, I didn't like it because I didn't know where my community was. The queer community has always been here, but it has not always been as out and as loud. There were not weekly shows multiple times a week. There were not monthly shows for Kings and things. You can't just go out any night of the week and find a queer event. Now you can. Now you can. 12 years later, you can go out any night of the week and find queer people, and it's not just drag shows. It's literally anywhere. We are out here and watching the local artists, entertainers, activists growing and cultivating such a strong, loud, and proud community has been a really incredible, joyful experience, and now I love being a part of the North Shore, and I can't imagine living anywhere else.
It is nice that like so many businesses in Salem, restaurants, bars, even stores. We do shows at Die With Your Boots On, and it's a retail store. They have a great stage. It's one of my favorite stages, honestly. But it's nice that to see how open all these businesses are in Salem, and some have helped us through like donations and putting big shows together. Sometimes it's a little expensive to do some big shows, but it really is so nice to see how open Salem is to the arts, and I just love how everyone's so different and everyone does something so different in Salem. It's nice. I've really just like fallen in love with the Salem community over the years. I feel like doing like the performing and drag has really saved me, honestly. It's like finding that community and this group, the Hometown Queeros. It's like we all perform together and stuff, but we've created such a nice bond together, and I consider them great friends. So
it's amazing to see how much the community has embraced us. I think we have such an amazing queer community here that I wish got more flowers for the amazing things they do. So it's really amazing to see some of the people I respect and admire kind of champion me. That just makes me feel amazing. And I haven't seen a community grow like in live. It's just crazy to see that like 6 years ago there wasn't an opportunity for me, and now there's an opportunity for pretty much everyone. There's so many people creating drag in Salem. There's so many people coming to Salem to perform. So yeah, I think it's just really grown, and it's really amazing to watch.
I think the Salem community has responded fantastically to what it is we were doing. I think that drag and Salem being a queer-friendly, safe space that has so many drag events happening right after COVID, I think is so kind of telling of the type of community we are, that when we have everything is locked down and everyone is afraid to go out and we're a tourist town, it's the first thing that comes back, which is intended for mainly local people here, happens to be drag shows. I thought it was a really wonderful thing that out of something like COVID and this lockdown, it ended up being how can we benefit the community, because the community is queer people. It is different people in Salem. I always say that Salem should be kept weird, and drag keeps it weird.
When you go to Gulu Gulu Cafe, there's a lot of people that have no idea that there's going to be a drag show. So I am their first experience. I'm so many first experience of drag queen. And, I've had people come up after the show at Gulu and been like, oh, well, I'm from Georgia and I never knew gay people were funny, but I like you now. And I think I'm going to go to a drag show again. And even though that's ridiculous for someone to say, oh, I see worth in you now, I'm very proud that that's what I get to do every Sunday. Versus like Friday, it's people having fun, it's adults, they know what they're getting into, because it's for adults. So if you're gonna go to the door and then say, I don't want to see a drag show, then you won't go in. But Gulu, anybody can be there, and I think that's the coolest part about it.
Obviously, there's so much happening in the world right now, and people are just going to think and believe like what they want until maybe they see it like in front of them. Because people don't know sometimes what they're walking into, it's a learning experience for them, and it changes people's lives walking in there.
I think a lot of times there's this kind of, we're a queer community, but they don't often get, paid well, get the respect they deserve. So I definitely see a lot of people taking back the things they deserve and being more loud about who they are and telling people that we've been here and we've been here for a long time and we're going to take up the space that we deserve now.
Not to speak ill will about other people, but I do think that in local communities, there are people that aren't really working for the actual benefit of the community to thrive. I'm the one putting literally my face, my voice, everything on the line multiple times a week for other people to feel good. What is throwing a parade or like one event? I'm actually going out there, I'm talking to strangers, I'm talking to tourists, I'm telling them that queer people deserve this space, that this is a privilege that we get to do this. I'm doing the work. I think I'm doing the work. But one time there was a small child, maybe 8 years old, a tourist that was walking by and saw the drag show and came up to us, and they were literally left by their parents in the middle of October, which was horrible. I was like, wow, how could you leave your child? And this little kid came up to Maxine and I, and they were like, oh my God, with a little accent. They were like, oh my God, you guys are so beautiful, and I just went down the street and I got my nails painted for the first time, and I'm so scared because I think my parents are gonna kill me. That's what this child said to me. And in that moment, I know that's heavy, but in that moment I realized how really important it is that we are outside doing drag for any person and any child or any human to see. And that this is so much more than costumes and makeup. This is about loving yourself and making sure that other people, that we preach love and other people understand to love themselves, okay? I want to thank Salem so much for being an incredible city. I'm so proud to be from here.
I feel like it is for everyone to enjoy. I always want to see such a, I want everyone to be accepting, and it's, for me, when I perform, it's about just having a little bit of an escape for a moment, and I feel like everyone could use that. It's not like, the shows aren't just for queer people. Like, it's really for everyone, and in a perfect world, everyone would be very accepting and just kind of letting everyone be happy and do what they love. But yeah, for me, it's about an escape, and life is stressful and there's so much going on, where I feel like everyone just kind of needs a moment to be silly, have fun, just kind of have a little bit of an escape for an hour or two. And so yeah, I definitely think it's for everyone. And yeah.
I've always kind of used performing as a way to communicate, and I think my mental health when I'm performing is definitely way better than when I'm not, just because I feel like I'm unable to connect with people, and that feels lonely. So I'm always kind of striving to perform because I want to have conversations with people, essentially.
Drag, especially, is one of those things that everybody can really get interested in and get involved in, because it is this performance of something that we all experience, which is the questioning of gender, the questioning of identity, and we do so in such an accommodating way that is exciting for people to watch. And I think that especially after something like COVID, where we're kind of put in a position where we have to really, I always saw it as like looking at our reflection in the mirror and be aside with our thoughts. I think that the introduction of drag into that it just makes sense.
Drag is for everyone. I can sing The Little Mermaid on a Sunday, and I can sing it on a Friday night for a bunch of drunk adults, and they're still gonna love it. And I think that that's the best part about drag. It is really cool that on a Sunday, people can just walk by in the park and there's a drag show there, or they can go to Gulu Gulu Cafe with their kids, and like, even if we might be saying silly words or anything, like nothing is too raunchy, nothing is like, there's clear parameters of like, this is the type of audience that we have today. I'm singing like In Sync and doing Britney Spears, and like there's nothing that's too crazy. And then, you know, when it's 18 plus, people can feel free, we can do whatever we want, I can be sexy if that's how I feel that night, you know. I like the duality of it, because like, who wouldn't want to be a well-rounded performer?
It is so amazing, the kids that like come up and dance with us and take pictures with us after, like it warms my heart, because that's like, if I had drag queens on the street when I was a kid, like I probably would have done it a lot sooner than I, you know, did, but it's a core memory for these kids. It's like changing their lives, and some of them who really know what's happening and like really know what's going on, like they are like going home to, you know, maybe throw on some blush because they're, you know, feeling some sort of way and they saw me do it, and it changed their life, you know. So
I remember being a kid, my parents let me listen to any music that I wanted to. Like, I was very lucky. There was no one ever like took away an album or a CD or anything. I recorded stuff from the radio. My parents' rule was like, hey, if it's got an appropriate language, don't play it at school. Don't play it in front of your grandparents. Like, you use your brain to do what's best, as opposed to these parents who are just like, well, I can't trust my child to think for themselves and to make their own decisions about what's good and bad, or what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. And like, that really sucks for that kid who's like not gonna grow up having a mind of their own. They're just gonna have someone make these decisions, and guess what? They're gonna grow up and raise their kids to have those same terrible values. And that's why we have this multi-generational homophobia and racism and all this stuff in our country, where it's like, it's 2023 and people still feel this way. This is exactly why.
One of the main jobs I had in New York City was being a nanny. So I was a quote-unquote manny for liberal families, and you know, I was in drag. Like, I would nanny them, and I'd be like, hey, I have a show tonight, can I get ready at your apartment? And they would, you know, these kids grew up, you know, playing with my wig foam heads, and like, you know, it's very interesting to see the change, because when I was in New York City, I think I was I believe, don't quote me on it, but you can film me. I believe I was the very first Upper East Side drag queen story time to have happened at a place that doesn't exist anymore. So I've been around kids and I see it, you know, even when I was a teacher and I would have nail polish on, one of the first thing a kid will come up and be like, you're a boy, why do you have nail polish on? And I would say like, anybody can wear nail polish. And their minds would be like, you know, and it's just that idea of like, oh, TikTok or YouTube or whatever they're getting it from, my parents told me this thing, but I'm seeing someone in real life just doing that, what they told me not to do, and I can be like that too.
When I first came across Nagley, it was purely because I went to Bagley as a kid, and when I moved to the area, I was like, they gotta have something like that around here. This is such a queer community. And then I found Nagley and was like, that's amazing. And they're like, the people who work there are all the ones I've interacted with personally. Like, everybody is kind. Everybody wants to make sure we feel respected and taken care of, both like emotionally and financially. Like, the space itself is really great. When I got to go there and like teach kids, like it was so much fun to like see the internalized joy of a child where they've seen a drag queen and thought, that's really cool, but maybe it's not what I'm about. And to go in there as a drag king and have them be like, maybe this is what I'm about. And just like showing them I taught them how to tie ties and put on a mustache. Like, it was so simple and it was so much fun. And we, like, there was a little Q&A where they could ask me whatever they wanted. And like, it was all just like very wholesome, happy, good time. And I know Diamond has done a few things with like teaching kids makeup or going in. I think she's done like mini shows there for them. And like people are just so afraid that we're gonna go in there and do something like crazy. I mean, not anyone who actually goes to NAGLY, like none of the parents who bring their kids there, but people who are unfamiliar with it and they're like so afraid of like, what could happen? Like, what could happen? Like, what happens if your child just sees a person walking down the street? Like, you're gonna see it either way. I don't know, it's just nice to have a local organization, because for me, like, these are the kids who are going to grow up and have to take care of us when we're old queers. Like, so I want to make sure that there is a next generation of people who, even if they're not queer themselves, they're still surrounded by that kind of thing and know that it's normal and that, like, to be accepting and open and all that kind of stuff.
A person authentically being themselves can change a child's life. Being at NAGLY, having those resources where these kids can come in and go to a dress-up room. No matter what gender they are, no matter what, they can find anything. I've donated like my old drag there, and I think about, you know, I wore this dress a million times. I've worn it all these places, but now some child who is going through this huge closet might just pull out this sequin dress and be like, wow, I love this dress. It doesn't matter who I am, what body parts I've been assigned, all of these other things that society tells me. All I know is that I love that blue sequin dress that I found in that closet. And that is so special. So I get so sad that there's so much hate and so much fear over drag, and I guess children being exposed to it, because we're all people and it's nothing that people should be fearing. It's really, really sad lately.
People are just afraid of like what they don't know, like simply. And all I'm here to do is just spread happiness and like put a smile on someone's face and make them laugh. You know what I mean? There's like no hate, there's no violence behind anything that I'm doing. So when I hear that hatred and when I see that hatred, it's like truly mind-boggling and so confusing, because all our messages is to spread love and happiness.
Salem in particular, you know, we have a wonderful community that always shows up. And Diamond says frequently at all of her shows, which I agree with, is if you can't use the energy that you put into supporting the shows, into supporting actual, real queer people, trans people, people that are being targeted, then we're not interested in your support. That isn't, you know, drag is fun and we all have a good time, but you know, drag has always been a protest. It's been very much rooted in protecting queer people. So that's what allyship means to me. It's like, it's not just showing up to shows. It's, are you willing to fight and defend queer people?
Smart business people, even if they're doing it just for business reasons, should make their businesses safe space. And if it's because they want to make more money, I'm okay with that if I'm still in a safe space. I think a lot of businesses aren't doing it for the wrong reasons. I think some probably are. But I think it's really reflective. Like, if you meet like the ownership and the staff, like, do you actually feel safe and like secure in this space, or like did they just throw a flag up? And in my experience in Salem specifically, there's not a lot of spaces where I don't feel safe in Salem, which is nice, because you can go right into the next town over and feel immensely unsafe.
You know, my idea of what it means to be a leader is you will not task anybody with something that you wouldn't yourself do. So when it comes to showing up or defending people or making space for people, like, I'm going to do that myself as well, not just reaping the profit from it. It's sometimes I do have moments where I wonder if what I'm doing is reaching people, or if I can do better, or if maybe this wasn't clear enough or my intention wasn't clear enough. And when I have people from my community that are also queer people, non-binary people, and they tell me that they feel represented and they get it, they get what I'm doing, why the long hair and why all this, it makes me feel like, you know, these are the people that I do this for. I'm not doing it for people who don't get it. So it's very reaffirming to have that, not just in my lifetime, but in my own community.
We started off this Halloween season with the Tabernacle Church being vandalized with like hate toward the LGBTQ community. And that was kind of eye-opening. It was where the queer prom was held too. So who knows if they knew like that or not. We literally were taking pictures on like the stairs of the church like the night before it happened.
It was a dance. It was a dance. We didn't even do drag. I think we each maybe did like one number. But it was just like, it was about the kids having a good time, and we were just there to like push the buttons and make sure they were dancing and having fun. And yeah, I like doing things like that, because like we had Bagley, but like when I was, you know, going to high school in Somerville High, like there wasn't a lot of dances that were like queer friendly per se. Like, not that I got in trouble for being queer, but like, I don't know, there wasn't a lot of community. There's a lot of allies in my high school that are now gay adults, which I'm very happy that they came out of the closet eventually. But as one of the few out people in high school and like middle school, it would have been nice to have more things like that instead of having to take a 40-minute train and a 10-minute walk to go meet up with like the other local people in Boston.
It was really kind of eye-opening that it happened like so close to home, because we are in this bubble a little bit where like we are so lucky to be living in an area that is so accepting of what we do and who we are. And the fact that I can walk down the street wearing this and have people like, you know, snap for me and give me compliments is like, people don't get that everywhere. Some people can't even leave their house with lipstick on without the fear of actually getting arrested. And that is the reality in this country. So it's really unfortunate.
I think that there's a big fear right now over people being themselves and their authentic selves, and society had a really big hold onto what men, quote unquote, should do and what women, quote unquote, should do. And if you go to a library and there's a drag queen story time and these kids are going there to feel safe, they're literally just going there to see a Disney princess read them a story. And then there's these angry mobs, or literally like angry people who are like saying that we're quote unquote grooming children, or I guess the word, grooming children. It's like this negative sexual, horrible stereotype that queer people existing in front of children means that they're pedophiles.
We're doing Elf at Salem Cinema, and we decided like, oh, well, since it's like a PG thing and it's kid friendly, like let's make our pre-show, like let's make our drag show kid friendly. Let's do it during the daytime and let's let kids come, because kids love the movie Elf. And there's nothing salacious that happens in that movie. We're not doing anything to like make it more salacious or sexualized or anything. And people, I guess, like, I don't have Facebook, so I found this out the other day. People are up in arms over like us perverts ruining people's childhoods. I'm like, you can just not come. Like, if you don't want your kid there, don't bring them. Like, the fact that you want to like threaten people and call them names and make them feel uncomfortable, when it's like, we're doing this as child friendly as it could ever be. Like, I don't know what they think that we're doing that's so bad and like threatening to children.
Rule number 1, you have lots and lots of fun. Rule number 2, don't touch me. I won't touch you, you won't touch me. Rule number 3, if you see something that you like, you should be tipping something that you like, okay? That is how drag shows work. That is how drag shows work. You give them $1, they'll come to you. You give them a $5, I might do a little like to you. If you give me a 20, yeah, exactly. If you give me a social security card, baby, we can talk about some things. We can talk. It says that waves to the policeman.
No fraudulent activity over here.
Absolutely not. No. Just a simple drag show in the park.
I would say the most you notice people being like homophobic or unaccepting is when the tourists come. Like, it's in October. That's when people are yelling homophobic slurs or not tipping at shows or trying to make people feel unsafe and getting kicked out of shows. The most of the time that's happening is in October, when there's people from out of town coming into our town. Overall, Salem, in my experience, has felt very safe. And like the times where I felt unsafe, it wasn't specifically because I'm queer looking. I think it's more like people think that like I'm femme and that I can be preyed on that way, and that's still even a mistake for most people. But like it's usually not a homophobic thing. It's just a drunk idiot trying to follow you home sort of thing. Yeah, which most people are smart enough to not follow me, but you know, some people are bold.
They just don't know what they don't know until they know. And after they come to see our show, they know that it's not, you know, anything crazy.
I think people value me on social media because I speak a lot of what's on my mind and what I go through in a unapologetic way. So in that way, I try to take social media as like, I am a leader in this community. I have things to say. People want to hear from me when certain things are happening. And like, if there's 9 people that have posted about a horrible thing, if I'm just going to add to that without actually doing something about it and changing it, what does my story really do help? But I know, obviously, because I have a wider following, I take that responsibility. So if I see something, I say something, I try to do something. But I agree, it is a void. It's like screaming into, especially the, you know, liberal on this side, it's an echo chamber. It's like, I think that too, we're amazing. It's like, but what are you guys going to do to change that? Obviously, it's the same thing with the Republican side, too. We hate them, you know, and it's just a big circular thing of everybody saying, it's all mental throw up. I don't really post how I feel about, you know, everything. You would not want to know what my opinions on everything. You know, I try to present what I can and fight for the things. I think I usually use social media, obviously, so people can see my art, but I use it to hold people accountable in more ways than one. I've done it multiple times to hold businesses accountable or hold community leaders accountable. And I think it's probably one of the most powerful things that people have right now, unfortunately. It's like a double-edged sword.
Non-binary means that you don't strongly identify as either male or female, and it's like a whole umbrella, and there's a million different ways you can express being non-binary, but you're somewhere on the spectrum of gender that isn't specifically male or female.
As a child, I already had just a proclivity, I guess, for dressing as the opposite gender. I was a theater kid growing up, and then I always wanted to play the male parts, which probably should have been some type of indicator for me as a child. But when I started performing as a kid, I did a lot of local community theater things, and then I majored in theater in college, and I went to Salem State University. And when I finished college, I ended up getting into the burlesque scene. So I worked as a burlesque performer for about 7-ish years in college and out of college. And through burlesque, I ended up transitioning to drag. And I ended up really enjoying drag because a lot of it can just be the look that is created, and then you don't have to take it off. If anything, it's encouraged to not take it off, which was a lot easier compared to burlesque. So it kind of was the theater kid to drag pipeline that happened for me.
I started doing theater in the 2nd grade, and I had a really high reading level, so I could speak really well, so I just immediately got cast. And even though when I was growing up in school, I was recognized as a female, I always felt very non-binary, and then I was always getting cast as male parts because I was the most masculine for a 2nd grader. So that was when I started playing male parts. So that's kind of my origin of drag, was literally as early as the 2nd grade, where they're like, "You're a boy," and I was like, yeah, I feel very seen.
I came out as non-binary in 2020, which is when I also had a very serious switch in terms of becoming a drag artist. And I remember at that time, there was a show in Boston that I had these pipe dreams of one day being part of. And it is just a local show, it's just small, but I remember thinking to myself, if I set a goal for myself of being part of this show, and I achieve it, I'll feel like I can do anything. And that was back in 2020, and I went through everything, everything about my persona as Dick Kane has been created myself. Everything I do is created myself. I put a lot of work into it. And I ended up being asked to be part of that show in Boston this last July. But I just remember kind of reflectively looking back at myself in 2020 after I came out and everything, and thinking how satisfied I was that I was able to actually achieve that goal.
I think what I set out in defining myself as a thing, as also as a king, is that especially coming from a theater background, there are strict rules on how you perform masculinity and femininity, and I wanted to experiment what happens if I'm not worried about either of those things. So when I refer to myself as a thing, I think it's more of, let's not worry about your idea of who I should be, and just let me exist in this space without you trying to define what is masculine and what is feminine. And I still use king because I feel like there's this misinterpretation of what a king and what a man should be. And there are feminine men, and I wanted to experiment with, what if I was someone who looked so not what a king was and defined myself as that, to kind of question why we have these strict, feminine, masculine things assigned to drag, which is supposed to be experimental. And a lot of people get into drag to kind of escape the labels that society has put on them. So I felt it kind of frustrating that that same thing was happening within the community. So I think a lot of people, and myself, speaking for myself, use thing to kind of expel that we have to be one or the other, and we have to look masculine or we have to look feminine. Why can't we exist within something else?
Well, I started as in burlesque, and when my friend started a troupe, she came to me to be like, "Hey, you do burlesque, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, but it's really weird. Like, I don't want to make people feel sexy per se. I want to make people feel confused." And she's like, "That's perfect. Like, I want to start a weird troupe." So I started doing we did like a neo burlesque, and it was like very horror, so it wasn't very like feminine and pin-up-y per se. So that's when I really started dabbling with like wearing mustaches, but I would still strip down to like my female looking body, but like I would start as a man and then end as a lady, and then people like didn't know what to be attracted to. And then when I met Miz Diamond, I was still mostly doing burlesque, and she was actually the first person to identify me as a drag king. Like I was like, I don't know if that's what I'm doing. Like I don't feel like I'm a specific gender, so to say that I'm dressing as like the opposite gender, I didn't know if I fell into that category. And one day she was like, "Yeah, like this drag king Buster Pants is amazing." And I was like, I guess that is what I'm doing. So is that what I've been doing this whole time, or was it burlesque? I don't know. So that's why my timeline feels very wibbly wobbly. Before I had the vocabulary for like knowing what non-binary was, I was always like, yeah, I'm just one of the guys. But like I wasn't dressing or trying to be a guy. I just knew internally that I was like, well, I'm somewhere in the middle here. So I never really felt like I had to come out per se. It was just like the older I got, the more vocabulary I had for it. So doing drag does come very naturally to me, because sometimes it does give me a lot of gender euphoria, and sometimes it's like, this is just like a fun thing to do.
I think something that happens with me and a lot of like trans masculine people or non-binary people is that we view them as kind of like sexless kind of beings who are just, aw, cute. So something that would happen to me is people would be like, "Oh, you're just like a little guy." And it's like, yeah, I am physically a small guy, but I also am just like a guy. So would you say this to, a short cis man? Probably not, because you would think maybe that would make them feel emasculated or infantilized. So I think in the intersection of gender and how people view me and how people view other people who might look like me kind of impacts that. So I guess it's, if you wouldn't say it to a cis person, don't say it to a trans or non-binary person.
So it's very fascinating, the spectrum of gender that exists, especially the spectrum that exists within the spectrum of being non-binary. I always, growing up, had a discomfort with my assigned gender at birth, as well as how I was perceived. And I took a break from burlesque because of that, because I felt very uncomfortable being perceived or leered at in this way that you would a woman or a femme person. And I started doing drag, and drag absolutely helped me come into terms with my gender identity. Because, you know, growing up, I always was like, I really want to play boy parts, and I also kind of like nicknames better than my real name, which, you know, you look back on and you're like, oh, this was queer identity kind of poking itself through. And when I started doing drag, and I started being perceived more masculine, and more so the idea that, you know, as a 5'1" person, I will never pass, if you will, for a cis man, but in drag, I am he, him, I am seen as a man, and it was extremely reaffirming for me, regardless of how my body looked, regardless of my height, my voice, whatever it might be. It's when I am in drag, that is my gender, that is my character. And there was something about that felt very reaffirming and very cleansing, that now I have my identity outside of drag in which I am neutral, and then in drag, I am he, him. And it made me feel more comfortable also with being perceived as she, her as well. And of course, that's just my experience. That's different for everybody. But, you know, I would encourage anybody who questions their own gender to always try drag, because I think it's wonderful. People celebrate you. They celebrate you, and sometimes you get paid, which I think is even better.
I get misgendered a lot when I do drag, and I do make a scene about it because I try very hard to give off a masculine vibe, and so often even local organizations have misgendered me multiple times. They're just completely ignored as a performer, but it's often like, you ladies look so good. And I'm like, oh, so you're either misgendering me or ignoring me entirely, or telling me I look bad. Like, it doesn't feel great. So usually I just handle it by being like, hey, I'm actually drag king, so you can use masculine or neutral pronouns with me. Or again, if there's someone crappy, I'll just ignore them for the rest of forever. I'm a Taurus, I can hold a very long grudge, so.
For me, how I live my life out of drag is very similar to how I live my life in drag. Like, I share the same pronouns with my character, but some people don't. And I think that's really interesting to see kind of people from all walks of life kind of coming to drag to discover something about themselves. So I think there's a lot of nuances also in terms of the conversation about, you know, drag kings and drag queens, because drag queens often receive the most violence, and drag kings are often kind of seen as the victim. So I never want to victimize myself while I'm asking for space, because I think that's important to be mindful that, you know, I don't identify as a woman, but I experience privileges that are of a white woman, and that can be very dangerous. So I need to always be careful of how am I requesting space? How do I say what I'm missing without accidentally or purposely, you know, inciting violence against someone who might be more marginalized than myself. So I think when we have conversations about drag and about gender, there's always some nuance to it, because there's always, you know, all these like race, political stuff behind it that we need to keep in mind when we're having these conversations.
You know, it's interesting because my character of Dick Kane is a separate entity from myself, but also under the title of Dick Kane, which I view as being a different character from me, I also am doing burlesque. I also am doing character performances. And I kind of view it as, when I do performance, this is the character And it's like they have their own collective that they also exist in. And I think that it's one of those things that the more people see me and work with me, the more it becomes a bit more clear, where it's like, it is still me, it's still my identity, but it is also not at the same time. It's, you know, when I perform, I always want to appear a certain type of way. I think it's kind of the same way that, you know, if we put on a dress or we go out somewhere for an evening, it does change how we carry ourselves. It changes how we talk, how we interact. And when I dress as Dick Kane, it usually has me carry myself in a much different way than just me out of drag sitting at home, or me out of drag going to the grocery store. And I think it's that phrase of, what is it? Is it suit makes the man or something like that? When I got into drag, I started being a suit king because I was like, oh, I'm gonna play gender, I'll wear suits, men wear suits. But it ended up becoming very much an identifiable part of my own drag, where I was like, it's not about men wearing suits, it's Dick wears suits. So, just small things that helped me kind of transition, kind of go into that character headspace. What I would want people to know, if it's the first time they've ever seen drag, especially drag kings, because I feel like drag kings are so frequently left out of the conversation of drag, is that there is nothing wrong with drag, and there is no right way to do drag, or wrong way to do drag. It is a satirization of gender, which means anybody can do it. Anybody can satirize gender. It doesn't matter what your assigned gender at birth is. It doesn't matter what you identify as now. It does not matter what your body looks like, because we're just playing pretend. We're making fun of gender. And it's fantastic. It's making fun of gender and also celebrating it in a way. So when people are watching it and they see it for the first time, I just tell them, I'm like, you know, enjoy this and take home and then analyze it on your own and be like, what was it I liked about that? Was it the way they looked? Was it the way they acted? Was it the drag colloquialisms I heard? And the thing is, that's, again, it's kind of the pipeline. It's the more you learn. And the more, what is your experience when you take it away? How did it make you feel? I think it all depends on how you feel.
I want to mess with people's expectations. And I think in my own life, being a trans masc person, there's always people who kind of don't understand that or don't see that. And that gets frustrating and upsetting. But I think in doing something like being a drag king and a thing, I'm kind of taking that frustration and making it my own. And if people think it's funny that I'm this 5 foot just tiny guy trying to perform masculinity and failing, I think that's on my own terms. So I'm kind of taking back what other people might deem as kind of a quality that they don't like about themselves, and I'm using that to my advantage, I think. So a little bit close to toxic masculinity, but I think I'm using masculinity and my own, sometimes lack thereof, as my advantage for performance.
I think that obviously thinness in many entertainment businesses is what people care about, or like having a cinched waist with the hips and having that moment in drag. I think drag has come so far in the last 10 years compared to what it if you're a drag queen, you need to have big hair, this and that. Now there's a lot of different bodies out there. There's a lot of things that are being celebrated instead of just the classic what you should be. In New York City, obviously, you're doing competitions. There's competitions 3 times a week. If you want to win those competitions, you have to do those things that people, quote unquote, want you to do your body. It's same thing with auditioning for Broadway. They want you to look a certain way. There are certain unfortunate, horrible beauty standards that come with so many of these businesses. I think the best part about drag is that I went to musical theater school and all my femininity was told, repeatedly told, you can't be feminine. You have to be able to play straight. You need to cut your hair. You can't have a cool hair color. You can't dress like that. You can't go to an audition. No one will want to hire you. And all those things that they told me to suppress, that was the bad thing. This is what makes me special. This was my calling the whole time. And I like wish I could go back in time and be like, psh, 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 do what you love to do and f all these people, because it's what makes people, I get to make people happy being myself instead of trying to change.
I don't know, I just take things that, you know, if I was a kid and I'd be like, oh, I wish I could wear that sort of thing. And now as an adult, I'm like, you can do that. You're an adult. You can buy whatever clothes you want and no one can tell you otherwise. Which is also, like, it spills over into my regular life because, like, I've always worked jobs where I can wear and look however I want, which is also why I don't like traditional theater, because if I went into a regular theater auditioning like this, I would not get hired for anything. They'd be like, first of all, you need to wear a bra and a wig and cover your tattoos and blah, blah, blah.
When I started doing drag, it was very like old school. It's very glamorous. It's very, you know, big hips, big hair, big boobs. So a part of what I felt like was missing was, you know, my girls. And when I felt like, you know, the time was right and I felt like I've been performing for quite enough time where maybe I can integrate something else. I also really love my tattoos and I don't like covering them up, and chest plate does cover up like my favorite piece. So it wasn't something that I was jumping for, but they are going to be a staple in my drag going forward.
I think that Maxine typically doesn't wear breasts, and I think that her body looks great and she always looks good with all of her tattoos out, and that is now a newer type of body that's being accepted by drag more like across the board. I didn't wear boobs for a really long time. Those latex boobs are extremely expensive. Drag in general is extremely expensive, extremely inaccessible. So I think that when you do have the point where you're able to afford a breastplate or able to live that fantasy in a way, it's something to be applauded. I remember when I got my first breastplate, I was like so happy, because it's like that's an investment in your drag. Just in the way if I got a really nice wig and now I have this wig forever. Yeah, it's kind of not, I wouldn't say it's like a badge, because it's not necessary. Not every person wears boobs like that. You know, this is just like a padded bra. This isn't like a breastplate. Also, they're hot. They're just not worth it. Like, they're good for pictures and good, but if I ever had to dance in a breastplate, like, kill me now. I think that there's so much more value in somebody being themselves if it is more of a gender bendy thing type of category or king type of category. I don't think that as a queer community we could have gotten anywhere without lesbians or AFAB performers or like, you know, gay men. They can't get anything done. They're like, where's brunch, you know? Lesbians are our rock, you know? So it makes me so sad that kings and things are not valued by the typical consumer, you know, because of Drag Race or because of these horrible standards that capitalism teaches us. Even when I'm working with businesses in local businesses, they'll, you know, I've had people be like, why do you have so many kings? Why do you have, and it's crazy to me that they care, because it's still gender expression, and once you get exposed to it, people love it. It's fear or, you know, misogyny. At the end of the day, it's still misogyny. They would rather see a gay man dressed up as a woman, and that has more value than a quote-unquote woman or an AFAB person making themselves look more manly. Because why would you do that? And that's a disgusting, disgusting standard in our society. It's horrible. It's the same thing with gay men too. Like, why would you be feminine? You know, there's this whole mask for mask standard in the queer community. Like, I only want to be with a masculine person because I'm a masculine person, because it's like, why would you be feminine? That's horrible. Why would you do that to yourself? And I think misogyny is the root of fucking everything. I shouldn't have sworn. I think misogyny is the root of the problem for so many things.
There is a lot of misogyny, both like from within, you know, the performance community and just from like the audience and the outside world at large. But I mean, if you grow up like being raised like as a female, like I learned how to deal with that every day in my day-to-day life. So dealing with it as a male character is just the same, but it gives me a little bit more to like joke around with, I guess. Take the misogyny back and use it for my own devices, I guess. I feel like there's a lot more expected of drag kings sometimes. You don't see a lot of drag kings doing like a park and bark, which I don't know if you're familiar with the term, is like when you kind of stand in one spot and look a certain way and just lip sync like a ballad or something really slow. I feel like drag kings are expected to either have to do like an extra crazy look, or they gotta do like flips, or they gotta do like some sort of niche thing to get recognized, as opposed to just like if they have to do twice as much to be half as good. Not in all cases, but I feel like that's kind of the representation. And like to do that, you know, if you have a lineup of 8 drag queens, you're lucky if there's one king in the mix. And then if they do something that's just as good as everyone else, it's not great. But if they do something that's 2 to 3 times as good, then they're on the same level as the queens. That's what it feels like anyway, or what I've seen in the world. Not so much in like our community, but if I go to like other places to do shows, that's what it feels like to me. Or that's when it goes back to like, oh, well, like you're not good enough for this time, but if you want to work for us for free, maybe you can do something someday, if you're lucky. So it's good motivation, but it is really infuriating sometimes, where like the things that I need to put myself through as a performer to be like, oh, well, you know, you were here as like a token whatever, like you got to be the one drag king, so like you, like a pat on my head, it feels like. Or I'm like, I just did a backbend down a flight of stairs into a split, and people were like, oh, good for you. Like, oh, okay, that one person who stood there for 3 minutes and just looked nice got twice as much recognition.
I've always treated gender very much as how do you feel when you wake up? And maybe some days you feel much more like a woman, and other days you feel much more like a man. And maybe, rather than getting rid of it, we can just say, oh, well, that's fine. Maybe it doesn't have to be that big of a deal. Maybe we all can just be what we want, and everybody will still wake up in the morning and go to bed at night. So why get rid of it when we can just add more? That's what I say.
It's such a crazy double standard. And it's very sad. And I love Buster and I love Dick and Pee Wee Vermin. Shout out to Pee Wee Vermin too, for really working hard in the face of straight up misogyny and homophobia, because they have to work 10 times harder. And I'm sure many women or many people who are in that category of human being or non-binary, AFAB people, have to deal with so much misogyny and so much hate on their daily lives. So I'm really proud of them they have done so much, and they've proven to people, just in the same way I have to prove that queer people have worth, they have to prove that drag kings have worth, and it's a really difficult job. It is not for the faint of heart. You're constantly put up against hate. So I think right now, our community, they give us so much, so it's hard to ask for anything from them. You know, I think that these people are ride or die for our crew of human beings, because they know how hard we're working for them to have a safe space. So if I could say anything to all the people of the last 3 years that have made us be able to do what we love. And I try to tell my audience that at the end of every show, because I'm so grateful that I get to wear what I want to do and create a whole look just for this one night for you to experience something special. And they're giving me so much life. They give me that life and that energy that you spoke of before. I'll be so tired, so miserable being like trying to put my makeup on, and then once I get there and people are so appreciative of it, it's just, there's no words that I could really put on that. So I'm just so grateful that we have the following that we do, and we have the people that love us the way that we do and want us to grow and want us to succeed. I just want to tell everybody that I'm really, really grateful for it.
And it's so nice when you see someone like come to a show for the first time and you're like, I don't know who that is, but they came to the show, and then they come again, and then they come again. I love it. I love being a part of the scene around here and like watching it grow over the years and like realizing like, oh, I kind of have a hand in that. Big responsibility, but I'm trying.
I love the hometown queeros and the Salem community. It's really been such a pleasure to perform for everyone and just get to know so many people and create so many great connections.
But the hometown queeros like have changed my life, and I'm hoping are changing other people's lives. So it just makes me really happy to be where I am right now.
I had my own struggles with mental health, and getting to perform and really get creative and show my art like to the community has truly saved me and been such a great experience. So just I love them. It's just I thank everyone for their support, and I can't wait to see what everyone does in the future.
What I'd say to the hometown queeros, I would say that they are all such incredible people. They are all individually incredible people at what they do. They inspire me. They work so hard because they know that this sort of thing doesn't happen without hard work. You can't just put on these shadow casts. You can't just put on these shows. You can't do basic things without it being basic. We want to be more than that. And I'm so proud that everybody really works so hard to be more than that. To not just show up, walk around and take tips and call it a day. They want people to feel safe. They want people to feel something. They want people to know and leave every show that we have being like, wow. And they're all so cool. I love them all a ton. They make me so happy.
Three, two, one.
Here we go!
Three, two, one.
Here we go!
Hey everyone, thanks for watching the documentary. If you want a little bit more drag and queer culture in your life, you can listen to my new podcast. It's called Buster's Beat, hosted by me, Buster Pants, local North Shore drag king. And I sit down with other artists and entertainers, and we talk about life, the universe, and everything. We've had drag performers, tattoo artists, people who work in live theater, musicians. We're doing it all. So please give us a listen on Spotify, or you can actually watch the podcast on YouTube. The links to all of those are in my bio on Instagram @PantsBuster. So we'll see you there. Give us a follow, give us a listen, and thanks for watching the documentary.
Hello, my name is Miz Diamond Wigfall, and you are listening to my brand new podcast, Yes Talk, which is basically a TED Talk, but we're just gonna yesify it and make it super gay. So this TED Talk, or this Yes Talk, is really just a chance for my audience to get to know me a little bit better, but also to get to know different queer entertainers. We talk about queer journeys, drag, performing, gender identities, all the things. So if you want to have a good time and kiki and listen to some slayage and some ferocity from the kings, the things, and the queens of the local entertainment, this podcast is for you.